Do we know what's coming? No. All we know is what has been and what is. And even that knowledge is spotty. It is rather spotty. It's not as absolute. So, for us to judge what is to come, we have to learn about what has been and what is. An important message. A story then. A boy grows up in a moderately large city. Not the biggest one, it's not the smallest one. It's not a city that's just a concrete block. There's not like an eco city. But there's enough green around. So the boy, he knows about the countryside, he knows about greenery, he knows about the importance of trees and grass. And the wildlife that lives everywhere in between. As he gets older, the boy gains a brother. There's sibling rivalries, but he loves his brother. As much as possible, he would look after his brother. But the boy doesn't know how to see what everyone else sees. He doesn't know how to think like everyone else thinks. As much as he loves his mum and his dad and his family, his child is very much on his own very often, with very, very few friends. The boy gets to nursery. He's 4 or 5. He's in nursery. He's surrounded by other children, and these other children are off in groups playing with each other. But he finds himself fascinated with toy animals. Only 2 other kids come over to say hello, and only one child stays by that boy. They know, one child, the other child knows that the boy is not the same, but he sees he's alone, so he goes to make friends. So the boy makes a good friend here, from an early age. A few years later, the boy's in school, and it becomes more pronounced that he is different from everyone else. his home life is difficult. His family's, his mum and dad are split. He still has his brother. But things are a bit tense at home. There's a new mother figure. It's just a little bit difficult. At school, the boy becomes, he becomes more ostracized. He feels more comfortable making friends with girls than he does with boys of his own age, because more often than not, the boys don't seem to get on with him. Most of the girls don't either. But there you go. When he does make friends, he finds that whilst he cares for them, he still finds it hard to understand. But he still tries. He always does care. He's betrayed by a couple of his friends, but he stays by them when he finds that when they find that they have got no other friends. He stays by them. He becomes friends with a vulnerable child in the school. This child becomes one of his best friends. It's an odd relationship, but you've got two boys who no one of the other kids really understands so well. And the boy is kind of support for the more vulnerable child. He shows very early his sense of care that he got from his mum. Despite the issues at home, the mum and the dad always proponed to both him and his little brother that you should always love your family. And given that the splitting up of his family, and his mentality when it came to not easily making friends, the boy starts to treat close friends like family. So he will care for them just as fiercely. As he looks around him, life is not too difficult. Not really. People find life difficult, but not specifically, starving so much, or, having no electricity, or anything like that. The boy doesn't himself experience this very much. He sees that as he gets older, it is even more pronounced that he is more different from the rest of them. But he also notices he's not alone in this. That there are other children. It becomes more obvious to him when he moves to secondary school that there are other children that aren't like the main group, and so he finds it easier to talk to those people. At home, things have become more turbulent. The way he thinks is coming into conflict with the difficulties in family life. Mum has become a little bit unstable. the boy has gained a sister through the mum and a different dad, but the boy still loves the sister just as much. The home system is still unstable, and he doesn't know how to deal with this. Now, most kids don't know how to deal with this kind of thing, but because of his problems already, he doesn't understand why these certain things are happening, or even sometimes what is actually happening. Although he sees a lot of things that most adults are trying to hide from him. Most of the family problems are actively trying to be hid from him so that it doesn't affect him and his younger siblings. But he sees it nonetheless. And these memories from when he was younger till now are formed from root memories, and they grow like the shoot of a tree. And as he grows older, they grow up and they form part of that base. Things move apace and things get more unstable. He's not the only one. He notices that some of his friends' lives are getting more unstable, and he also worries about them. Finds that he can't do anything, and that he's more alienated than ever from the older members of his family. Apart from those that think that well, I say that are more intellectual. They read. They sit and learn as a hobby almost. And it's something that is also part of the book. It's part of the boy's quirks. That he's a fantastic love for learning. But that's part of who the boy is. He has a source of love. It might be a love of learning, and it does set him apart from many other students. He's not the only one. There are girls and boys just like him across the country, but they are of a relative minority. But it takes him a long time to learn to express love for different aspects of life. He's tried several times at this point to be in as young boys do. He tried to be in relationships. I find it difficult. None of it goes successfully, and he never understands why. As far as the young boy is concerned, it's his fault. Something wrong with him. Because all the evidence so far throughout his life showed him that he's different from everyone else. So having girlfriends, it's difficult. As he gets to his teenage years, he does experiment sexually with both sexes. And an event causes him to solidify with one way or the other. For this example, he stays heterosexual for just for the example, it's not to be anti-gay or anything like that. Traumatic things happen, and whilst he's not turned against gay people, that's his sexual preferences more solidified. But it doesn't help him with his frustration of being able to bond with people, and that's what he wants. He wants to bond. Because of his love of learning, he learns about, reading. He learns about the subject of honour, and he feels that this is also a form of, in effect, is a form of love. He could be wrong. He could be right. It's debatable. But he sees it as a form of love, not just duty, as the films like to put it. And being a young boy, he finds himself a few times breaking his code of honour to find that he regrets it so bad, because as he's previously stated, he sees honour like love in the same framework as love. And again, this sets him out from the rest of, he as he gets older and leaves school. All of this, not understanding everything leads him to be very angry, very frustrated. Not bitter, but feeling that he himself is misunderstood and that he doesn't understand other people. And he wants to. When he does make relationships, they tend to last fairly long, but they don't last, or they don't end up ultimately lasting, because whilst it takes a lot to find someone who will... Lady Sif! Will return his affections. It's his person, as far as he's concerned, his personality is so oblique that it's difficult. Again, he finds it difficult to understand. And as far as he's concerned, all of these failed relationships are his own fault. All of them. Even ones where he is the one that's mistreated, he still feels that he is the one that made the mistake. Because he didn't understand what was going on. And he says to himself after the one that hurts him the most, that never again will he be so ignorant, even unwillingly. Because it means that hopefully he would be able to exercise his honour in a way that is successful and is reciprocated in kind. But his fundamental flaw is that he still can't understand why these problems keep coming about. It's not necessarily his fault. It could be that he was just born in a way that makes it so that he can't think. That he can't grasp that. But it does make things difficult for him, and when he looks at the rest of the world, he sees that that his problem isn't as isolated as he thinks it is. Now, whilst he does have a problem with understanding other people, he sees that with other people, the problem is that they refuse to understand each other. This is a different problem completely. And even that confuses him, because for him, he's gone through his life struggling to understand, but wanting to. And then when he finally opens his eyes, he realizes that that he realizes that people, that the other people he's been trying to understand don't want to understand, more often than not. And so the man goes on, not understanding, and being surrounded by people who refuse to understand. I would say that was a very frustrating life. I wouldn't like to be in that position. The boy, the man, he loved. I think the important thing here is that whatever he did, he still tried to love. And through that, he still tried to understand. Love doesn't necessarily have to blind people. It's the same as, and in that aspect, neither does hate. It can be an aspect of clarity for some. But I think the ultimate message of all of this is understanding what was and what is, and who people were and who people are. This might sound, this story's a little bit abstract, but there's so much misunderstanding, and so few people are willing to see it because they're so locked up in their own lives. No, I'm not saying that trying to get on in your own life is a bad thing, but when it leaves you blind to the rest of the world and what's going on, it's difficult to argue against people who are angry. We just need to start trying to understand each other more and understand the situation, the situations around us more, rather than jumping to conclusions about people and situations. There is an aspect to us all of love, and each of us show it in different ways. It's just difficult for others and easier for some. But there's no understanding. Our willingness to understand others, which is making love a lot harder now, and more distrust. more arguments than debates. A wisdom can be found in just the path of learning, not in the end result of what you have learned. I mean, you do learn wisdom. You can learn what you often learn wisdom from that, but the actual doing of going through with trying to understand someone else or something else is another way of gaining wisdom that you ordinarily would not have. It's a form of dark wisdom that is so often these days just cast aside. If the aspect of learning is used for someone else's profit, not for the joy of it, and not for the want of understanding for the sake of understanding. It sounds abstract or even a bit basic on some level, but that's the long and short of it. There's a lack of willingness to understand, and so there's you see a lack of love and friendliness towards others. Let me know what you think. It can be a sore spot for people, but again, there is I hate to admit it, there is an aspect to the Bible and the Quran and the Torah and other written stuff, religious stuff, with the stories that have metaphorical meaning, so long as they're not taken literally. But they can help us to understand. Stories are important. That's why we have films. Films and TV programs are just a visual form of telling stories. And there are many of them that say many things. But often these days, there's not much good story writing. So there's a lack of understanding. A lack of willingness to understand. When a good film, really good film comes about, oftentimes it's put off as, no, don't like it, it's not good enough, it's not actiony enough. And to me that is a symptom of a societal unwillingness to understand others. What's my daddy doing? Take for example rats. You'd agree that's a adorable face, wouldn't you? You would agree that that's an adorable little face. Well, the reaction that often is given to rats is essentially an unrealistic response. I mean, we as primates are more closely related to rodents than we are to cats or dogs. And when you begin to understand these creatures, you understand they are just as loving and not as unclean as those who refuse to understand would tell you. Isn't that right, little girlie? What are you up to? Yes, what can I do for you? you want you to come on over and say hello. Popping your head up like a little meerkat. Yeah. What? What? Go on then. Pop. No, again, I wouldn't expect all humans to just all of a sudden love rats, but the way we treat them is due to both a lack of understanding and an unwillingness to understand, partly through fear and partly through prejudgment. Hmm? I know it's a little bit of a ramble, but I do think it's important. And I know talking about love is a little bit hippie-like. It's a little bit, not politics or anything, but I do almost think, in some way, that kind of what I'm talking about is also relevant in terms of politics. Look how divisive and argumentative we become about subjects that we really shouldn't be. Let me know what you think. I don't quite know how to judge this, apart from saying that we need to be more willing to understand, just in general. Ignorance is not bliss. I hope this makes sense to someone, and I hope that the message does go out, because I'm telling you, it's not idealistic to think that with more understanding we'd be more successful at being progressive and moving forwards. To circle back round to the beginning, we'd be able curious little girlie. We'd be able to move forwards because we've successfully looked back and around us with clarity, with understanding. Well, then. Yeah. That's it. Up your pop. That's it. Okay. Just a little bit of understanding. That's all we need. A little bit more, anyway. Hope everyone has a good evening, or good morning at this point. Aaron, good morning. Golden day. Blessed Thursday. And this has been Shadowita, and this has been my Durk Viska.